You're listening to the Primal Happiness Show, a podcast dedicated to helping you thrive in this crazy modern world. Every Tuesday, we explore the nature of how our minds really work, what exactly the human animal requires to thrive, and how we can live happier and more fulfilling lives. If you're new here and haven't yet taken our free class, then there's no better place to get a jump start on reclaiming your primal happiness. It's where we'll guide you step by step through our antidote to today's modern world. Simply head on over to primalhappiness.co/antidote to get the free class and discover how to thrive without having to move to a planet that's not so crazy as ours. But now, your host, Leanne Brook-Tyler.
Hello, my beautiful people. A huge warm welcome back to the show. In today's crazy modern world, men and women are living shallow, disconnected, and unfulfilling lives. So we created the path for those who are ready to reclaim their wildness and actualize their deepest gifts. And the next way that you can walk that path is by joining our new crucible, Waking the Wild Medicine. This is for you if you know you came here to do important, much needed work, but despite all the years of seeking, you still haven't discovered exactly what it is. If you're clear on what you came here to do, but the normal ways of doing business just don't feel aligned to you, and maybe aren't working too well either. If you've been successful creating a living, doing something else, but you know your soul is now calling you towards something much deeper. Or if you're already doing your precious soul work, but you know you're now ready to create a previously undreamed of level of impact with it. You'll be joining a potent, intimate circle of sovereign men and women, each of you feeling the call to embody your soul work. We'll be harnessing divine archetypes, real magic, and deep embodied rituals to aid you in the reclamation and actualization of the gifts of your wild medicine. If you're feeling called to this deepest of journeys, go claim your place now at primalhappiness.co/medicine. This week's show is with Mandara Cromwell, DCM and CEO of Cymatics Technologies. She studied early cymatic therapy with British Osteopath Dr. Peter Guy Manners and has made it a mission to take his work to greater heights through ongoing research, education, and collaboration. Extended travel to India and China gave her incredible insight into the ancient teachings of yoga, which combine perfectly with the healing power of sound. Mandara's mission is to be one of the many seeking to change the face of healthcare in America and the world through advanced sound technology. In this show, we spoke about the link between sound, images, and our well-being. We spoke about how we can tune into the kinds of sounds that will give us energy and how we can release and reset from stress. Let's dive in. Hello, Mandara. Huge welcome to the show.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me. This is very exciting to be with you today.
Me too. It was, I was so excited when we knew you were coming onto the show. And then like during our little chat just then, I'm like, oh, there's so much here that I can't wait to get into. So excited. So we are going to talk about, again, just the languaging you're using, this kind of marriage of spirituality and science. You talked about ancient wisdom, modern technology, and like as soon as you were saying those things, I could just feel my kind of curiosity pricking up. So the first thing I would love to know is like, how did you get into this work? How did you end up on this path?
It began as a child. I really do believe that we have indications early on of our life path. And as we sit still and look in hindsight, I believe everyone can connect some of those very important dots. For me, it started in childhood. I grew up on a farm in a rural area in the middle of the United States in a state called Kansas. And my family was a very devout Catholic family. We attended a Catholic church that was in the Gothic style architecture. And with this particular style of architecture, when you're sitting in the center of it and you hear the pipe organ sound and the choir began to sing the Latin song, you cannot help but be moved physically and emotionally, viscerally, with these sounds bouncing off this particular style of architecture. And so it was very profound for me from a very young age. And I had many experiences, and in that particular style of church, there were paintings of angels and saints, stained glass windows with the saints, and their halos would come to life. And so these were my first, shall we say, vibratory experiences of seeing sound and vibration become visible. And that particular style of architecture, this whole experience, was my first teacher of the principles of resonance and entrainment. So yes, it started very early on.
Wow, I love what you've just said there about looking at our early experiences as an indication of our life path. It's funny because when you were talking just before we started recording, that popped into my head, and I find that fascinating. I've often noticed that because often I do ask guests that question or something like that, and the number of the can see there was something in their childhood, and often quite a lot in their childhood, that then kind of put them on the path. And you could say, well, that's because, of course, whatever they experience, but sometimes it's not such a direct path. Often it's like a dot that you can only join later. So yeah, I love that on its own without the content that was there too. So those words, was it resonance and entrainment that you just said? They are fascinating words. Say more.
They are. And when we get into sound and vibration, we understand more that those are two very important words to describe states of being. Are we resonating? And we even have this kind of in our slang phrasing, our slang language of like, hey, that really resonates with me, what you're saying. Or, that really feels like the right song for me, or something like that. We relate our experiences to sound and vibration through these principles. And, particularly in this time where we are finding ourselves in like a health crisis, what are we resonating with, and where is the entrainment there? And people can kind of look at, gosh, am I entraining more to the fear factor, or am I going more to the side of looking as the goal of where I want to be? Where do I want to resonate? And many times we are led to nature. And this was another indication for me early on. My family, as I mentioned, grew up on a farm, and being in my grandmother's rose garden and seeing Mother Nature come into bloom with the roses and with the petals, and the geometry's there. And we find this divine beauty within nature. And that is a great place to go when we're feeling very stressed out and want to resonate with calm. Today we hear about forest bathing, where people go for long walks into the forest. We hear about people loving to play golf because they're out there in that sea of green, which is very calming and gives you an opportunity to, just resonate with nature and train with that calm vibration. And this is the number one thing we find in our health crisis, is that, so many people are very stressed out, and stress is there. It's everywhere. It's how we respond to that stress that is important. So do we want to entrain with, the chaotic principle, or do we want to come back into a more coherent state? And this is kind of where I go with my book when I share my experiences of sound and vibration, and how now today, through the science of cymatics, we can see different states of sound and vibration visually, going from chaos to coherence. And when things are chaotic, there's no form. But when we reach a more coherent state, when we calm down and really get to that neutral state, all of the geometries calm down and generally are exquisite. And we see this resplendent in nature as well.
Oh, yes, I love that. So taking what you've just said to that, I guess, deeper level where we're looking at resonance and entrainment through this lens of both kind of ancient wisdom and, as you're describing, kind of what we now can see in science and how, oh, wow, that's what we intuitively knew. And hey, the science is saying that. Would you be able to illuminate more on those ideas of resonance and entrainment through those two lenses?
Yes. So looking at the macrocosm, we have telescopes now that can see far into this vast universe that we live in. And we have, through our technology, been able to capture the sound of stars and other planets. And we've been able to bring that sound down to the audible level and feed it through an instrument that's called the cymoscope and actually see what that sound looks like. And all of these sounds in nature are absolutely exquisite, beautiful geometries. Then we have the microscope. So we've gone from the macrocosm to the celestial bodies, and now let's go down to the microscope where we can see the beauty and complexity of our blood, the cells within our body. And when these cells are vibrating at a healthy rate, they too exhibit this exquisite beauty. When they move into, let's say, a state of cancer and looking at those cells, we see that they're very distorted and the coherence is no longer there until we can perhaps calm down, reset into a very intentional state of neutral and kind of turn that ship around so that we can then entrain to what the healthy cell looks like, what the healthy cell vibrates at. And I'll go just a little bit into the power of intention here, because our intention is very important, that we intend to move this ship from an unhealthy state to the healthy state of entrainment. And now that we can visually see this, because, bringing it into the visual context really is very powerful. And I'll relate this back to the ancient scriptural texts of the Vedas. When we get to these situations in our lives and we go, oh my goodness, where am I? What have I done? How do I get out of here? The answer is always there if we look for it. And the Vedic texts, the oldest scriptural texts that we know of today, always say to go look within. And through states of going within, of introspection, of meditation, we find the answers. We can unlock the key to solve all of these puzzles that we are faced with. And so it's becoming entrained with our intention. We entrain ourselves intentionally to that neutral state where we have full function of our prefrontal cortex, and I have to say that we have so many published articles now on the value of meditation. And so this is really profound information that we can glean from something that has been around for thousands of years. Now, as far as visual, we mentioned about the microscope and the telescope. If you go back into the Vedic text, one of the techniques that the yoga masters would use is a technique called drishti. And drishti, translated from Sanskrit, means focused gaze where we can visually, with our eyes open, look at a specific geometric form. And the number one form that is talked about in the yogic text is the Sri Yantra. And this is a geometric form that as you stare or gaze in a softened way into the heart of this geometric form, you can slip in through a doorway and access higher states of consciousness. When we are in those states, this is when we make our very best decisions. This is when we really see more fully what is happening in our whole environment, and we can make those choices of where we want to entrain ourselves, where we want to find our natural resonance.
I'm feeling really relaxed listening to you, actually. I think it's having a kind of placebo effect on me, even hearing you talk about these things. What do you see is happening there? Like talking, for example, because I find this so fascinating anyway, how we have vibration, sounds, images, and then how it affects us. I find that whole thing, I'm trying to sort of map that in my head at them and I can't quite map it. What's happening, for example, when someone is looking at, I know some kind of sacred geometry as you're describing, how is that acting as a portal as far as you're seeing it? What's happening there?
What's happening is that we are being pulled into a state of consciousness, and we get to decide which images we want to focus on visually so that we can entrain to that vibration. So do we want to focus on something that is maybe very healing, like the green of a forest? Or do we want to focus on something that is not very, we'll say just not very beautiful to the eye, something very distorted? That affects our whole physiology. And in the Vedic text, they talk about the 5 bodies, that we have the physical body and then we have these subtle bodies. So we're all kind of like the dolls, the nesting dolls. So we have that within our own existence here on this plane. And what we want to do is we want to bring all these bodies into a type of coherence. When we find ourselves, and I give a lot of lectures on behalf of the International Sound Therapy Association, and one of the main questions that parents will ask is, what do I tell my child that is happening to them when they listen to that awful music? So that awful music is really a subjective opinion, and we live in this sea of sound, so we have to pick what makes us feel the best. And so there's a French physician, his name was Alfred Cymatics, and he determined that there were just 2 sounds that give us energy and sounds that deplete our energy field. So I always tell parents that they can teach their children to ask themselves, be your own monitor, which sound is giving me energy or which sound is pulling me down and making me feel very chaotic. I can't focus on my studies. And this goes as well with adults. What environment are we in that is really keeping us on center and on task? So we have this whole force field that I was just talking about with the 5 bodies. Each body is affected. So at some point, you might want to clean out your garage. So you might put on a specific type of music that really keeps your feet and your hips moving and your arms going up and down, moving things. And then when you want to reset from a very stressful day, you might want to choose something much more relaxing. In my book, I talk more about this, and then I also use the images of advanced sound technology where they create very delicate and exquisite visuals for people to gaze into. And this particular type of healing sound made visible helps people to not only meditate, but to help them access higher states of healing. Sort of like I was sharing with you a little bit before about the drishti technique that the yogis have studied for thousands of years, which is where I got the idea. I had been to India, I lived in India and studied Ayurveda and the scriptural texts. And being in those temples, again, resonating kind of like the Gothic style architecture, a different type of resonance set up that really pulls your energy up through the higher states of consciousness. And when I would see those Sri yantras or the specific symbols encoded in the temples, in that architecture that helps remind us of our natural state. And so then when I saw sound made visible, I was like, oh gosh, this is a great way to help people not only meditate, but bringing it into today's technology, because people just love technology today. We have to know that there is a nice balance between what the ancient tradition taught us and marrying it with today's technology, because we all want to get there faster, right?
Oh, I love this. So what's going on at brain level when someone looks at one of those symbols created from sound versus, I don't know, a photograph of a rose? I'm guessing from what you're describing, there's something distinct, like there's obviously lots of different beautiful things we can look at, all of which I'm getting the impression are likely to have a beneficial effect. But I'm hearing there's like a distinction between types of images, and then like within even a category of, say, for example, symbols, sacred geometry, each of them is going to have a different effect. What's creating that difference? What's happening either at a brain level or a vibration level or a being level? Like what's creating that internally to have those differences made manifest?
When we look at a rose or something beautiful in nature, we feel this release of endorphins, which is our feel-good factor in our brain. And this is that the endorphins, particularly beta endorphins, are those neurotransmitter release cascading to help us feel really good, a euphoric state. And this is the type of thing that we feel when we see something beautiful, or when we see a beautiful dance or symphonic orchestra playing a piece by our favorite composer. All of this is released in that state of beauty. With the symbols, and if people have ever been to holy sacred sites, and for Gothic style churches that are constructed, a very famous one is Chartres in the south of France. There's a lot of information that people can find out about that particular style of architecture there. But as you are looking at these architectural creations, you see symbols embedded in the columns and the buttresses and the arcs. It's the same way in the Indian temples. These symbols that are encoded with vibration into the structure affect us at a deeper level. We have this innate knowingness that we recognize that. And it's throughout the whole field. So we live in this collective field where we all sort of resonate at some level together on this scale of octaves, right? And when we see these images that are in sacred spots encoded there, it elicits not only this innate knowingness, but a feeling response of resonating at a higher level. The energy is pulling us up. So one is kind of an, observer, where the other one is impacting us at a level of knowing. And so that's one of the things that I discovered when I was doing research with my particular sound healing images. When people would look at them, they would come, and they would have had no idea what they were looking at. Many of the people would respond saying, somehow or another, I recognize that symbol. Somehow or another, that is affecting me at a level that I really know it's helping me. So how would they know that before? So that's when we know we're really on to something to help people. So what we want to do is, place things in our environment that help support our total field, all of our 5 bodies. And that's why we put beautiful things in our homes and put nice things on our desks at our offices, because we want to have that energy vibration help contain us in our very most perfect state, that state where we really make the very best decisions for ourselves, that state where we see beauty within all the chaos.
Oh, gorgeous. So, I've got 2 separate questions, both vying for to be voiced. So is it possible to reverse engineer from, say, an ancient symbol into sound?
I believe so. I believe we have done that, so to speak, with our modern technology. And we have a lot of research out there and ongoing research just on the sound of Om, which is, coming down through the ancient text known as the number 1 primordial sound. That's the cosmic hum of our universe. And that's why so many people find refuge in just that very basic seed mantra.
Yeah. And so what we're seeing from looking back at ancient wisdom, I guess, materialized into symbols, is that they have a healing vibration. There isn't a randomness here. There was a kind of a knowledge then that what they were creating was more than a pretty pattern.
It's true. And if you look through history, the temples were really important to all civilization for thousands of years. And this was built by the people who were in the know about these vibratory, geometric, architectural formations where people would come in and be able to be healed or be able to get back on track. And one of the, actually today, there are still tours in ancient Greece, or from, ancient Greek sites of the god Asclepian temples, where they would be constructed in a certain way, and people would travel to these temples, be in this particular type of geometric configuration. They would spend the night or nights, and priests or priestesses would come in and, check on them, record their dreams. These were, I believe, our first hospitals, where people would come and get a type of rejuvenation. Of course, the hospital today is a little bit different than that context.
Sadly.
We've gotten a little away from that, which I'll bring into this. Not all churches of Gothic style architecture have this type of resonance. It was only a particular type of training that was allowed for, say, from the schools of Pythagoras and on throughout the ages, that these people were really given the knowledge of this type of power, of how to create these structures so that people could be uplifted, so people could get back on track, so people could be entrained to their higher purpose.
Wow. I feel like I could spend just ages geeking out on all the kind of what's going on there, but I feel like listeners are probably wanting us to now take it to somewhere more, let's say, usable, practical, something that's helpful to us in our lives. What would you say would be, clearly just surrounding ourselves with beauty, beautiful sounds, nature, all makes complete sense and is so practical and doable for most of us. Is there anything else that you would say would be, and also looking at your own work and what you've seen with others, like I guess two things. One, what else can you suggest that people do? Two, what kind of transformations, results have you seen from people entering into this kind of work?
Gosh, where to begin? Let me first of all share a very brief experience with you, which I think a lot of your listeners might relate to. I relate it to snow skiing. So I learned to snow ski at later on in my adult life. And so I was in my 30s, and I did bring some athletic prowess to the table, but I had never been skiing before. And so fortunately, I took 3 days of lessons to begin with. So I kind of got the knack of it. And the ski instructor told us on the last day, he said, if you really want to get the good ski, wake up early in the morning and go up to the mountain before everyone else is there. Well, I learned this when I was living in India. If you really want to get the best seat in the temple to meditate, get there early, right? The early bird always gets somewhere. So I woke up the next morning, got on and I was like, oh, this is so beautiful, exquisite Mother Nature beauty everywhere. And as I'm going up the ski lift, I go, oh my goodness, I am on the wrong ski lift. There are so green is the easy level, blue is the intermediate level, and I found myself on a ski lift to the black.
Oh my goodness!
Which is, expert level. Get to the top, and I go, oh dear, what to do? And no one around, because this is the early morning, and no one is. Everyone else is still asleep. And so, as I mentioned, I grew up in a Catholic family. And so it was not uncommon for us to call upon the help of the saints and the angels for guidance. And so immediately I heard my grandfather's voice come through me saying, Holy Mary, Mother of God, what to do now? Here I am at the very top of this mountain. My knees are knocking. My stomach is totally in knots and nauseated. I can hardly breathe at 10,000 feet. How am I going to get down this mountain alive? And I think that's where a lot of us have found ourselves during this recent health crisis. Whoa, square in the face. What do we do? And the thing about this is that many people are faced with this type of stress day in and day out. And when we have this chronic style of stress day in and day out for a very prolonged period of time, this is where we get into big trouble. And we do need to pray, or we do need to set good intentions, or we do need to use our words to call upon our higher power to bring the knowledge and clarity for what direction should we take at this time. And this is where sound can really help us. The very first thing that I always tell people is to breathe. Because the first thing that happens when we're stressed out, suddenly we find ourselves not breathing. And if you just take 3 deep breaths and recalibrate. The other thing I always tell people is, please.
I've got to laugh. Sorry, that's probably, my children always laugh because I've got like a set few phrases I say to anyone. One of them's breathe. And mine's always 3 slow breaths as well. The other one's drink some water.
Hydration is key. Yes. And then as we're laughing here, I always say, have at least 3 good laughs a day, because that actually helps with the breathing, helps with the sound, helps with the release of those endorphins that make us feel good. And when we feel good, somehow or another, we feel I can handle this. Okay, there is a way out. And then we move into humming and just sighing as you take in a deep breath and relax your shoulders, go, let it out. Makes you feel good instantly. These are things that you can do at your desk, in the shower, in the car, anywhere. And speaking of the shower, sing in the shower. Even if you were told you couldn't carry a tune, just belt out something, anything, a sacred song, a spiritual song, your rock and roll song, whatever your song is, wake up and do that in the morning. And then we have the advanced sound technology. I have created a device for people who really want to flip the switch, sit in a chair very comfortably for a 30-minute session and really retrain and get entrained with a vibration that really helps all of your bodies come into alignment. We've had great success with people who are very stressed out and mentally as well as physically, emotionally. And when we get into, people always ask, well, what about significant diseases like, cancer and Parkinson's and, neurological Alzheimer's, et cetera. And what are these cells? They are very stressed out cells. We got on one of those black diamond paths mistakenly, and now we need to figure out how do we reinvent ourselves? How do we come back to our own natural resonance? Because what will happen is as soon as we make that decision and as soon as we center within ourselves, that changes your whole brain chemistry. It changes your whole physiology. The ship begins turning right there and then to a new direction, back to your new state of resonance.
Beautiful. I love what you just said there about cells being stressed. And I think it's easy to miss that. We talk about stress a lot generally, but the idea of the cells themselves are stressed. I'd love you to say a little bit more about that. And again, sort of particularly linking it to this idea that there's, I guess, a healthy vibration and an unhealthy vibration. Would you just say a little bit more about that, please?
Sure. And I'll talk to you about some of the studies that we've done when people are trying to figure out how did they get on this trajectory of a condition that is quite serious. And one of the things that we find is a lot of times this comes from the oral cavity, that in our mouth, this is the gateway to our whole overall state of health. And throughout years, this has been kind of ignored and not paid attention to. Yes, we go to the dentist twice a year, we get our teeth cleaned. But what happens is bacteria enters at the mouth level. And through the ancient tradition of Chinese medicine, they have these maps of the teeth and the organ systems that are related to each tooth. And there's a process called thermal imaging where we can see non-invasively into a body. And we can look at people's oral cavity and see inflammation and infection that they don't even know they have. And we can trace this down the side, and particularly in women who are suffering from breast cancer, we can see this inflammation come all the way down this meridian and in the breast where the infection in that particular part of the mouth is draining. We can look at the lymph nodes underneath the arm, and we can see they are firing red hot because, our lymph system is the system that takes out the trash, basically. We have to have that elimination pathway very clear. When it gets backed up, when the cells in that particular system start backing up and go, wait a minute, there's too much going on here. And as I mentioned, the condition in the oral cavity can be progressing for decades before we actually go, oh my goodness, this is from a bacteria, in the mouth that has gone awry and come down that meridian pathway. And wherever the person's weak system is, that's where things will start brewing, where the cells will get so overwhelmed from being very stressed out. Then the body sends in the warriors, which is inflammation. So everything gets inflamed, like, please, let's deal something here. And then all of a sudden the cells just go, you know what? I cannot handle this. I'm going to bed. I can't wake up today and fight this fight because I am too stressed out. So that's how we use sound to very gently start unraveling this very complex health history. And and like I say, you can do it. You can start turning this around just with the power of your own thought, the power of your own breath, the power of your own intention every day saying, hey, I'm going to start turning this around. Now, if you've gotten too far down the path, you need to pull in more tools. And that's why I created the AMI750, where people can just sit in a chair, put their feet on it, and it can retrain the cellular structure and the whole, 5 bodies in a whole type of force field to start turning that ship around. But yes, the cells do get very stressed out, and then they don't, they don't replicate properly. They don't function properly. The system starts breaking down.
Wow, I wasn't expecting so much gold in your reply there. I want to just dive back in. I'm conscious of the time, but I need to ask you another question about that first before we close. So I found that fascinating, everything you just said about the mouth. I'm guessing this isn't necessarily really obvious when someone has that sort of bacteria overgrowth, let's say, going on. It may not be as obvious as, say, for example, a toothache. So it could just continue and continue until it then shows up elsewhere. So they're not going to necessarily know that.
That's correct. That's correct. It can be brewing for a long time. And we have, for your listeners that want to go to my website, they can see images there. And of course, I'm happy to answer any questions if they want to write in and ask. But I show images of subjects where they had no symptomology. They had no idea that things were going awry in the mouth until they signed up for our study. And so we took people and looked at the thermal imaging, which is a non-invasive measuring the heat and vascular activity. And they were shocked to find that sources in their mouth where they had crowns and a bridge, an implant, where there was still inflammation in that area. The body's trying to deal with that. And so those are sites where bacteria collects. And yes, we should brush our teeth and floss and all that, but we eat. And so it's an easy place for bacteria to harbor. And so you don't know sometimes for decades why you can't get rid of a certain situation when the culprit is in your mouth.
Wow. And so other than what you've already talked about, all of the practices, breath, sound therapy, is there anything you'd suggest? I'm assuming they have a kind of indirect effect on what's happening in the mouth. Is there anything like specifically about how we address and create a healthy balance within the mouth that you would suggest?
Diet has a big impact here. And of course, we're in an age where a lot of people have gotten off on this track where they're a high carbohydrate, a lot of sugar or sugar type products, the, aspartame and those types of high fructose corn syrup. You have to be really aware of the processed foods that you're eating. Because if you look back, there's a dentist. His name was Weston A. Price, and there is a Weston A. Price Foundation. But this is a dentist, and he looked back at different civilizations, and they had no dental problems. And it was all based on them eating a natural diet. And here's a very interesting thing, that when we eat the foods in season, when we eat locally, and now we really need to make sure we eat organically, but when we eat those foods, they have a certain bacteria, good bacteria for us, and that feeds our oral biome and our microbiome. So when we have everything in the head and the gut connected and this really strong force field, then we don't see the evidence of cavities and things in the mouth. You can help keep this in control with the things that you eat and drink. And I do have to bring in stress one more time here, because you can eat right, you can do all the right things, but if you have chronic stress in your life, if you have an emotional situation, a situation with a relationship that you're not, watching or looking at this stressful situation, if you're not dealing with that, stress is the number one factor to decrease the immune system.
Wow. There's so much here that, like, every little thing you say, I feel like we could just set sail in that direction too. But I guess we need to bring this to a close. It's been absolutely delightful. If listeners want to find out more about you, your work, and you've mentioned a free gift that you can offer them, where can they go and find out about all that gorgeous stuff?
Oh, yes. Please come to my website at cymatechnologies.com, and that's spelled with a C, Cyma Technologies, TECHNOLOGIES.com. And just send me an email with any question that you have. But if you send me an email and tell me that you've listened to our podcast here today, I will send you a free gift. And it's a pretty spectacular free gift, I have to say. It is a very beautiful 90-minute video that talks all about not only the science of sound in a very easy way. I mean, you could even have your grade school, elementary school children watch this and really understand the principles of entrainment and resonance. But I talk about the mystical side of cymatics, and then we have two really beautiful segments of sound made visible images in artistic films. And they alone are worth the free gift. But anyway, it's a 90-minute video, and I invite you to email me and tell me that you've seen or heard us today, and I'll send you the link to that video. I highly encourage you to look at it on a big screen, invite some friends over for dinner, and see the beautiful art and artistry in sound-made visible images.
Oh, gorgeous. I think I would like that too. I want that free gift. Oh, thank you so much, Mandara. This has been just wonderful. Again, I felt like a real relaxation and opening coming just listening to you. So I can't wait to dive into this more. Thank you so much. Just absolutely love the conversation with you.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for your good work too.
Wow, what a fascinating show. Here are my takeaways. The power of resonance and entrainment. What we listen to can create healing. Pay attention to which sounds give you energy and which ones take it away. If you pay attention, you will start to notice that. And lastly, the ways that Mandara suggests releasing and resetting from stress. Breathing well, laughing at least 3 times a day, humming and sighing, singing in the shower, and of course, sound therapy. If you'd like to get the notes and links for everything we spoke about this week, hop on over to the show notes, and they're at primalhappiness.co/episode 298. And if you're feeling that call to embody your soul work, come join the potent circle of sovereign men and women, each of you feeling that same call from your souls to embody and express your wild medicine. Go claim your place now at primalhappiness.co/medicine. If you don't want to miss out on next week's episode, head on over to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, or your Android or iOS app of choice and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll get each episode delivered straight to your device as soon as it's released. Thank you so much for listening. You've been wonderful. Catch you again next Tuesday.